conversation is predominantly going to be regarding individual home buyers.
You also want to ensure that legally there are no problems that you encounter.
We'll also be talking about RWS, which is Resident Welfare Association.
So certain words that we use in Karnataka, in Tamil Nadu or in Andhra or Delhi or in the north, you can't treat your apartment like an individual bungalow. In fact, today what I see is there are a lot of builders themselves who are sharing reports.
So we have Ms. Neha Nagaraj. Welcome.
Thank you.
We've done a lot of seminars together. We've done, I think, 2 or 3 seminars till now. We've predominantly talked about resident welfare associations in the seminars. You've been practicing for a long time, over a decade, almost a decade and a half. So your experience is not only in RWA, but also in individual homeowners related legal aspects. We're going to pick your brain to see what we can understand and how a homeowner, predominantly an apartment or a villa buyer, and the management committees of a resident welfare association can fortify their legal aspects of things. So welcome.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be here, and it's amazing that the kind of work that you're doing, one of the kind in Bangalore at least, or maybe in the whole of the country.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think we needed this kind of audits because a lot of times when we go to courts for the purpose of litigation and when we're fighting battles, it's always good to have some kind of evidentiary value of a third party audit. So I think in the scheme of things, it's fantastic.
Thank you. Thanks. And this is not going to be the only video. It's going to be a series of videos. So if you have any questions, please put it in the comment section so we'll be able to answer them. So the conversation is predominantly going to be regarding individual home buyers. And you may also want to mention whether this is Karnataka centric laws or whether it's pan India. So whoever looks at this video or listens to this on the podcast is able to then understand and tweak whatever their requirements are based on what we educate them on. We'll also be talking about RWAs, which is Resident Welfare Associations. So let's look at the scenario where there's an individual homeowner or home buyer, a potential home buyer, considering to purchase an apartment or a villa. In broad terms, what are the things that they need to be aware of and what do they need to go through, something like a checklist, one after the other, so that their investment, which in India is probably once in their lifetime, is secured?
Right. I think the mindset is very important to begin with. It's important for everybody to understand, no matter who your builder is, no matter what is the kind of reputation your builder carries, it's essential that you treat the property as your property and go through the legal scrutiny. It's very, very important. I'll just probably start with home buyers.
Sure.
Right.
So when you say home buyers, you mean somebody
Home
who's
buyer of an apartment.
Apartment, yeah.
I think we've sort of really moved. As much as personally I love individual homes, but I think we've really moved out of that culture. We're moving.
Security, maybe also
community.
Power outages,
yes.
all of that stuff. Yes.
So even though they're buying a single unit, one single apartment, you need to know your entire land, right? Suppose you're buying an apartment in a 20-acre land. It's not just the 4 walls that you're buying, but that entire 20-acre becomes very important to you. Because invariably you're going to use a lot of that land, and you need to know, is that land even usable? Has the whole construction been done right? So the mindset, that's what I mean by mindset, it has to change. You can't treat your apartment like an individual bungalow or an independent site.
It's not an island in itself.
It's not.
Okay.
So when you do diligence, it's important that you understand your land. Because how do apartments get constructed? The permissions or the history of land, everything is the entire land. It can't be, nobody's giving permission in terms of one apartment unit. So therefore, it's important that you do diligence of your entire land, number one. And number two, if there is an issue, people also feel that, there are 700 apartments. Everybody's going to suffer. So I'll just, that mindset also has to change. Don't get security based on, saying that I have support. So one person suffers, let's all suffer together. Be that person who has done your diligence and, will ensure that your community is good. Because ultimately, why are you purchasing an apartment? Because you want that community living, you want that same safe space, and you also want to ensure that legally there are no problems that you encounter.
You made a point that every individual who's buying a unit in that society, it is good for them to get this audit performed, like a diligence as you called it. Would every person who performs the due diligence find the same thing, or is there a potential for somebody to find something new? The reason I'm asking is somebody can come and say, if one purchaser has done this, why can they not share it with everybody else?
Absolutely. That's something that I have seen communities do. Or a group of people come.
Together.
We've had experiences where a group of people have come together saying, "Can you do diligence?" Because we're 10 of us and we're picking 10 apartments. Because anyway, even if you're doing one, so the manner of diligence and the scrutiny that as lawyers that we undertake, no matter if it's one apartment or 10 apartments, it's the same. So yes, even group people can approach lawyers if you know, or if you're so giving. See, a lot of people don't want to share reports that easily because they're like, "I paid for this."
Got it.
If you want something, go pay for it. That's generally the attitude. But otherwise, if you don't mind sharing, there's no difficulty there. In fact, today what I see is there are a lot of builders themselves who are sharing reports with purchasers. That's a very good way. That sort of establishes a lot of bona fide.
When the builder shares their reports to establish bona fide, there is also a sense of like, oh no, this is by the builder, right? So he will tell you good things,
Correct.
right? So we can take that, and a lawyer such as yourself will work on that, or will you start from scratch?
No, we always start from scratch because we can't. It's not about that it's coming from a builder's lawyer. If it comes from any lawyer, because the way we look at things, the way some other lawyer may look at things may be different. And there is no point if I'm just looking at somebody's report and confirming, right? It's important that what does diligence mean? That we're looking at every single document that you're sending us. So essentially, we need to look at it from a different point of view, from different eyes, so that, and maybe we'll agree with the builder's report. There's no difficulty there. Some people may say, don't give us a titled report, but just go through all the documents to see if it is in sync with what the builder's given. Well, that's also a good way to do diligence. But yes, it's important that you get confirmation from your end and don't just rely on
somebody else. Could you name or take us through what this diligence includes?
Right.
What this diligence is about, and what are the various documents that get checked?
Right. So when we say diligence or title scrutiny, land scrutiny, there are many
Sorry, I
words.
also want to ask whether this is the same across India, or are we talking only about Bangalore
So
today?
real estate laws principally may be the same, but it varies state to state. So certain words that we use in Karnataka, in Tamil Nadu or in Andhra or Delhi or in the north, the words may be slightly different. But essentially, principally, the laws may be the same. But every state has its own real estate laws.
Okay.
So I think today we're primarily discussing about Karnataka. But the process of diligence is the same. It's not that we can't undertake diligence for Tamil Nadu, Andhra. In fact, we undertake diligence for properties based out of South India. So what we start off with is the land diligence. So let me take an example of 5 acres of land on which an apartment is constructed. We will look for the first, what people call as a mother deed, right? It's the oldest antecedent document that is available.
Okay.
So we start from there. We'll see which is the first conveyance deed, sale, gift. What is that mother deed that people call, right?
So when does this mother deed come into existence?
It's the oldest document that you can get hold of with respect to the property.
Okay.
Now it depends on who's buying the property, how the transfers have happened.
So say the Maharaja was to have gifted the land to somebody, then that
there are
would,
grant certificates.
Okay, that way. Okay.
So we've seen documents since, I think the last diligence that we conducted, we've seen a document of 1900 which was a grant. But so we try to procure what is the oldest. But we tell our clients that look, at least do a 30 or a 50 year. 30 to between 50 to 30 year diligence is good enough. If you have documents that are 50 years old, 30 years old, then we're okay.
Okay.
30 is minimum what we look at. If you have 50, that's great.
Is there a reason for the 30 and the 50-year period?
We're trying to avoid litigation. We want to see if the transfers have taken place properly. Because today the law is allowing people to come back and say, I had a share in this land and that share was not given to me at the appropriate time and I found out about that today. So therefore there is a challenge in the court of law, which means your property is stuck for a long time. Your value reduces, distress sales happen. A lot of things can go wrong and you don't want that, because the minute you buy a property, you want to live there peacefully and you want it to appreciate. It's both, right?
So you're saying if there is a piece of land that's bought and somebody was entitled to a share of that,
At any given point.
so any given point in the future, they
No,
can come.
In the past.
So they can come to
They
you.
can come, they can come.
There
and
is
they
there is no period that says no, after this amount of time you can't come back.
So there is law of limitation, but it also says that from the date of knowledge. So they come and say that I found out about this today.
Okay.
I didn't know at that point. Nobody told me. I was not aware of these documents that have been signed. I've not been made a party. My family is sort of not made me a party, not disclosed. But I found out about that today. So my date of knowledge is today. So therefore it may not be a very, it depends. It may not be a very sustainable or a very meritorious kind of a case. But unfortunately, once you're stuck in litigation, you're stuck there for many years.
Got it.
And that's what you try to avoid.
Sorry, come back to
So
Mother Deep.
therefore we at least do a minimum of 30 years to ensure that nobody from the past comes and haunts you today. That's essentially what we try to do. So we look at the oldest. So then we look at title documents, which is your sale deed, your gift deed, your relinquishment deeds. Those constitute where the transfer has taken place, where the ownership has changed hands from A to B, B to C, etc. So those title documents is something that we look at, whether the title has been passed on correctly as per law. A lot of times it's very essential to check this because property could have been transferred through interstate succession, which essentially means that if the head of the family passes away without leaving a will, how does the flow, like how many children does he have, who does the property go to, who's claimed ownership, whether it's done rightfully. So those are the checks that we do when it comes to title of the documents. Next is we also look at revenue documents, which means that whether the passing off of the title has also been reflected in your revenue records, like your RTC.
What is RTC?
Record of tenancy and crops. So basically what RTC, it's very similar to a Khata transfer. When there is a transfer of land, it reflects it. RTC says who's the owner, what is the extent of land, which is his land that you're talking about. Whether there was tenancy, because in the 1970s there was a law that came here. The law that came that tiller is the owner of the land. And a lot of tenants made applications saying that, I'm the tiller, so make me the owner. So there was that, I think during Indira Gandhi's regime, this came about. So we also have to check that, which your RTC generally reflects. You get your RTCs from the 1960s. So we try to procure the oldest RTC. Even before the RTC, there's something called Index of Land and Record of Rights, ILRR, which also tells you who was the owner, what was the extent of land he held. So we only do this to cross-check between title and revenue, whether it is uniform, whether it's in sync. What if there is a title transfer but that's not reflecting in the revenue? Then what do you do? Or vice versa. The revenue is indicating something but we're not seeing that in the title. Then what do you do? So this becomes very essential to avoid any future litigation that may come about. At least, why do you need to do this? To establish that you're a bona fide purchaser. What does bona fide purchaser mean? That law demands that you do your checks and balances before you purchase something, so that tomorrow if there is any litigation, you can go before court and say, look, I have done my checks and balances. I got this report, and as per this report, everything was clean. So it's not that I bought this property in ignorance, because ignorance is not a defense in law. So you can't go and say, I didn't know. That's not a defense. But to go before the court and say, look, I've done my checks and balances, despite that there was no way for me to figure out this. So then you're recognized as a bona fide purchaser before the court of law. And that's one of the essential or the primary reasons why you need to do a diligence.
So the basic reason is tomorrow, if you've done your due diligence, you have a stand in front of the court saying that, look, I have done my work and during my search, I couldn't find something because it was probably hidden. And that gives you two legs to stand on.
Absolutely. Absolutely.